Yo, what's up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching Malignant. Malignant is the latest James Wan film in which a woman is haunted by visions of a strange being who is out committing murders of people she does not know. If you're a horror movie fan, you had this one circled on your calendar. James Wan quite possibly might be the best horror director of our generation. The problem is, he hasn't touched the genre since 2016. Don't get me wrong, the guy is a great director in other realms outside of horror, but there is no denying that few people can do horror like he can. I mean, just look at the Conjuring universe when he's not the director. I mean, that speaks volumes. You can't replicate that kind of perfection. So to see him return to this genre, his bread and butter after almost a decade, I don't know, I was pretty stoked. So much so that I woke up early the day that it dropped on HBO Max to watch it before a weekend of camping. Long before my girlfriend woke up that morning, which put me in a little bit of a dilemma because James Wan films are not that of which you watch with low volume. So I busted out my headphones, my iPad, and watched the movie on that with my Friday morning cup of joe. It might not be ideal, but what it is commitment. And I'm glad that I went this route because it enhanced the audible experience, the great sound design, the vintage James Wan, and the pros start right there. He really just has a knack for squeezing the most out of an audible environment. I mean, everything just sounds so full in his movies. Everything just reaches out and punches you right in the ear. With a simultaneous punch to the eyeballs because per usual with his films, this movie looked great. The lighting was fantastic. He did a great job utilizing concentrated blasts of light in the frame, whether it's a window in the room letting in exterior light. It could be a TV. It could be frankly, a really strong fridge light. Whatever the case, these sources of light did a lot of eerie, creepy things, yet very cool to break up the darkness. Pairing exceptionally well with this were seemingly his signature awesome creative camera movements. You've got some low sweeping shots throughout the house like Evil Dead. You got some like corkscrew barrel roll shots going into a spinning fan. We even get a long tracking shot in which we're looking straight down at a girl from a bird's eye view, watching her run through a house room to room, and we are following her every step of the way, showing all the walls as she passes from room to room like it's a freaking NES Zelda game or something. What was also gnarly was the location and set designs of the film. This plot allows us and gives us an excuse to visit some of these really creepy yet very cool places. Old hospitals, old houses, abandoned warehouses, the Seattle Underground, all of which are set to atmospheric perfection. Cobwebs are all over the place. It's enhanced by the superior lighting and sound design that I mentioned before. They went maybe a little overboard with the fog machine, but still, it very much worked for me. What also worked for me was the blood and brutality of this film. It's something I've noticed James Wan does not really work into a lot of his horror films, definitely not to this degree. This has got to be his most bloody film to date, and I loved it. I love that over-the-top gore and brutality. It's not perfect in every kind of film, but when it is called for, it is great. This leads me to the overall tone and vibe of this film, which frankly, I was not ready for. This film has sort of a throwback vibe to it. It's super campy. It has a lot of really cheesy one-liners. It has soundtrack moments that sound like it was written and performed by Marilyn Manson or something. The characters are over-the-top, ridiculous, rather hilarious, built off of tropes of the genre. This was all something I wasn't ready for because frankly, well, I had no reason to be. This movie wasn't marketed to be anything campy. James Wan is not known to make movies like this. So when it started to unwind like that, I'm like, what the is going on? There were moments where I was straight up laughing out loud at how ridiculous, cheesy, and rather bad some of these moments were, and I was ready to peg them as cons because I did not think that they were intentional at the time. But then the third act hits, an absolute bananas third act, and I finally realized it was all by design. It was at that very moment where I had a little mental reset, where I stopped expecting a serious James Wan film, despite the fact it was clearly not presenting me with one, and just decided to embrace the absurdity and have fun. I just decided to put my hands in the air and just let it take me on a wild ride, and I enjoyed it through the third act. It was a blast. It almost made me want to re-watch the film immediately now that I knew what to expect from it. That this is not your everyday horror film of 2021, even if James Wan is capable of making the very best of them. This isn't even the other kind of horror film, the slow burn, cerebral, mental, emotional, metaphorical horror film. This is like campy Sam Raimi vibes, which frankly you don't really see often, especially with a national release. It's that over-the-top absurdity, ridiculousness that I was hoping to get out of Willy's Wonderland, frankly. For those of you out there that love that movie and wondering why I didn't like it, wondering what I was expecting to get out of that movie, the third act of this movie, that is what I was hoping for. absurdity, borderline hilarity, blood, lots of blood, and action. Actually good action. Seriously, the third act of the film has action sequences and they're actually really good. Lots of wide shots, longer takes, fight choreography. I mean, damn, some of the action in this movie might be among the best we've seen so far this year. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but still, it just kind of shows the versatility of James Wan as a director, having helmed movies like Aquaman and the Fast and the Furious movies. The guy has proven that he can do and direct just about any movie or project he is given and do it really damn well. I honestly think I was more impressed with the fact that he gave me something new, something different, something I wasn't expecting, rather than giving me the usual James Wan horror film, even if he can really excel at it. However, that being said, if you're going to make a campy film, there's obviously going to be elements in there that are going to kind of give the movie a little bit of a lower ceiling than a serious one. Like, there are just certain emotions that I like to feel in movies that get into like the A range that you just cannot get with a campy film, and that does lead me to the cons. For one, the writing in the film follows a lot of tropey and predictable beats. Between the characters, their backstories, the way the plot unfolds around them, it all kind of follows a cliche template. It also has a lot of weird, awkward moments in the writing. Sometimes it's dropping exposition dumps at strange times. There's a moment where something traumatic happens to our protagonist and she is staring out the window blankly into cyberspace. There are two people in the room with her that are trying to interact with her, but she's not giving them anything. She's scarred, so they're talking to each other. And they start giving information to each other that's definitely exposition for us, but the way that they're talking about that girl while she's in the room. Like, damn, she's awake. She can hear you. Like, come on, man. Other times it's awkwardly unnecessary dialogue. Like, there's a revelation that happens where we and character A simultaneously learn that character B is also character C. Sorry, that's confusing and rather vague. Avoiding spoilers. It's obvious, we know, we've connected the dots, we don't need to say it, but still character A blurts out, "My God, character B is also character C." I busted out laughing, and frankly, it wasn't the first or only time that I reacted to this movie in that way. Like, for instance, also the acting, pretty much across the board, not very good. I mean, it very well may have been by design. Maybe James Wan just didn't want all of the actors or actresses in this movie to really show us what they've got. He just wanted them to have fun playing these tropey-ass characters. But nevertheless, I just wasn't blown away by anything that happened in the acting front. Similarly, I wasn't blown away by the soundtrack of the film. It was composed by Joseph Bishara, not sure if I'm saying that right, what else is new? But James Wan and this dude have collabed on so many projects, especially that of horror movies, so there's familiarity there. And maybe that's why it seemed like there was kind of a disconnect, because this wasn't like every other James Wan horror film, so maybe scoring it is a completely different beast to tackle. It wasn't a bad soundtrack per se, I just think that situationally, it didn't always have the right mood to convey to what is happening in the plot. Another thing was the antagonist of this film. He is super ridiculous, which does fit the bill for it being such a ridiculous movie, but that being said, he was pretty damn laughable. He's not interesting or compelling. His voice is rather hilarious. The things he says, the things he does, and the visual treatments of those actions. There is one moment in particular, it actually may have been the moment where I flipped my tune, had that mental reset, where I just busted out laughing. It was this visual that, when you see it, you'll know. All in all, though, if you go into this movie expecting the usual fantastic, serious James Wan horror film, you're gonna be disappointed. But if you go into it ready to cut loose, laugh, have some campy fun, I think you'll find it just groovy. I'm going to give Malignant a B+. But that is just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. New videos coming real soon. Stay safe. Thanks for checking in.